We use it every day, often not thinking about it. 120 liters per person per day in Germany. And it is the foundation of all life on this planet, of animals, humans, of society, economy, and of our very own future. Water. And yet we sometimes take it for granted, especially in countries like Germany, where it rains a lot, we have clean drinking water from the tap, and there's a functional wastewater treatment infrastructure. But this is not the reality in big parts of the world. As I learned in the online training course for HAKs, 1.8 billion people on this planet do not have access to clean drinking water. They often drink water from sources contaminated with excrements, giving rise to diseases such as diarrhea, polio, hepatitis A, or cholera. We do need a new water regime. This is especially pressing in the light of climate change, because climate change has a big impact on water systems all over the globe. It changes rainfall patterns and creates more droughts and more floods. So how can we design a better and more functional water regime for the globe? This very big question I will discuss today with Professor Antje Boetius. Antje Boetius is a marine biologist. She received the famous and prestigious Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz Prize. She undertook several deep sea ocean explorations, and since 2017 she is director of the Alfred Wegener Institute. At the same time, she focuses also on water as a resource for human beings. And I think this taken together, she can provide us with a very special, holistic and scientific expertise and perspective on our topic. So I myself am really excited about this conversation. I am Christian Uhle, I'm a philosopher, and I'm the host of this series of dialogues financed by the Export Initiative of the German Ministry for Environment. So let's meet Antje. The thought is so simple, and yet we sometimes forget it. We only have one planet, we only have one Earth, and the question is, how can we make it livable for all human beings? And why have we not solved these very fundamental problems with water? We are in the year 2021. It's more than 50 years after the first person set a foot on the moon. We're living in an era where we talk about quantum computing, about nanotechnology and biotechnology, and everything is so impressive. Sometimes it feels like we're living in a science fiction, And still, this very basic topic is still not solved in a constructive way. How? Why? This is my first question to you, Antje.
Thank you very much, and thank you that you think I'd be an expert in this very big question of how come that we are still living in this fundamental injustice with access to clean water. It's so fundamental because as humans, we have no choice with water. We need to drink, and if we don't drink clean water, we can always die. And millions of people have that threat. In fact, I checked the facts, and it's 30% of the population who experiences in their everyday lives shortage of clean water. And 30% of the Earth's population of humans, and we are all one species, is we're actually talking billions, right? And so why is that? Because it is not a problem of technology per se, because we know how to get to clean water. It's a problem of cost. It's a problem of infrastructure planning. It's a problem of enabling citizens to have governments that care and governments that have the ability to overcome historical practices, historical injustices, and are enabled to invest in infrastructures. And that's, of course, really complicated to think that to the end. If we want access to clean water for every person on Earth, every baby that is born, it means shifting the mode of living together. It means shifting the mode of our economical environment in which we are, shifting the mode of this feeling of unity that we are just one kind of people on one spaceship, planet Earth.
But what I don't understand about it, I mean, like when you say it's like also a lot about like the governments have to like address this topic, who have to like invest more into infrastructure and so on. I mean, water is the foundation of life in every country, but therefore is also the foundation of societies, the foundation of economy, of economic growth and prosperity, and so on and so on. So isn't it like the most, to me it sounds like the most irrational thing on earth to not invest into water? I mean, like you can, I mean, where if not there, no?
Yes, of course. But then when you look at Earth and the climate zones and the places where humans live because they cannot live in other places, but also the longing of people to live in their cultural homes. And cultural homes does not mean like only where they're born, but where their ancestors have lived. I'm a polar researcher and have a lot of these discussions with the Arctic First Nations. That means people who have a tradition where they have a long-term record of their ancestors and their gods that live in the cryosphere and frozen grounds. Frozen grounds is also a way of water, it's just frozen. So they say you cannot expect that because of climate change and because of all the other threats or because of better technologies elsewhere, that we are moving, that we are becoming displaced people, that we are leaving the sacred grounds of a world, a part of this earth that means a world to us. And so, per se, this fundamental right to have a good living, traditional practices, and a home to occupy, a habitat to live in with the animals and the plants you know, with the water you know, that's a fundamental right, you may think, but it isn't even in terms of our legal practices. We do not even have a human right for clean water and the living in a certain habitat with certain animals and plants. So it's a fundamental concept that we are lacking, that this belongs to humans and that nature is part of us and we are part of nature and water is part of nature, and clean water can be enabled by a healthy nature. But when you take the flow of the river away, when you have a pollution of the river because someone else has a mine nearby, if you change this fine balance that nature, animals, plants, and people had, then of course we become dependent as people, humans become dependent. And this can happen everywhere, by the way. It's not only restricted to areas in Africa or South Asia. We become dependent in the moment when we leave the balance with nature and the balance of the natural flow of water. If we change that, if we elsewhere tap into a river, if we pollute a river, if it becomes too warm, like what will happen also to Europe, it becomes too warm in some areas, there will be too much rain in some areas, and this is now a discussion also in Germany, with so much flooding that the question of the pollution of the water is not from having too little water, it's from having too much water. Altogether, it means that infrastructure, the basic infrastructure to make a living, water is a key priority still after all these centuries that we know that clean water is the essential step, the essential life support system as is clean air.
You talked about that, like there are certain populations, like in the very north, who have to leave their homes, who have to leave like the sacred grounds where their ancestors come from, as you framed it. And as I understand it, I mean, like climate change also changes like precipitation patterns, like rainfall patterns all over the world. So you talked about like too much water, but like droughts will also be an emergent topic. And do you see, like, I mean, that will also lead to more migration, doesn't it? I mean, because like in some regions, like in the Sahel zone, for example, which are already like very, very fragile, like human environment systems, like these like can really actually collapse, and then people do not have a choice but leaving.
Absolutely. This is, of course, a long-standing problem. It has always been there. The Sahel zone, as you say, is very dependent on large weather patterns. That has to do with weather patterns which rely on certain ocean weather patterns, especially the Atlantic system. And so it is not a new problem that we have as humans, but we are now facing these problems with a world population of 7 billion people and rising. And so when we say words, which we often do, say words like, is 10% of the people who have this, or 30% that, the sheer number, the suffering at the individual number is just, one cannot even think about it. The dimension of people that are becoming displaced from change in weather patterns due to climate change, from change in precipitation. As I said, there can be droughts, there can be too little and too much rain, and it can actually also happen together, that in parts there's too much drought, and then when heavy rain comes, when the rain that you need over the year comes all in one day, this increasingly extreme situation. I just had a letter from a journalist who wrote to me, how can I express that the extreme is the new normal? That's a deep thought and also a scary thought. Extremes are difficult because we cannot cope. We cannot simply adapt fast enough. And again, because it's not interesting to always talk about risks and drama and crisis, it's interesting to talk about solutions. The basic solution is to understand that investment in infrastructure, how the water flows, how there is access to water, that is the key for survival of human beings that are planning, because they have to plan not only daily access to water, they have to plan where is the fruits that I grow, where is the cattle that I need, where is the school where I need to send my children to. And this makes us dependent on a certain space that becomes more and more unpredictable. So it's all part of a system of understanding how survival works, that water is essential in survival, and that yes, today, with all of our knowledge and all the money and all the technology that you've just mentioned, no, we have not used that richness, not the technology yet, to make a better life for all people.
It's like absurd that we like develop this like super high technologies in certain fields and at the same time haven't solved this problem. I mean, I can't get over it.
Of course, when one thinks a bit longer, it seems absurd from the perspective of humanity as one, right? But of course, when you think about, okay, it's now about infrastructure mostly. Infrastructure means planning and investment. And when you think political systems, you will immediately understand, and I'm sorry, I'm saying this as a polar marine researcher, so I'm not a political scientist, but nevertheless, I would say that a political system needs to be elected and re-elected. And so if you are a political system that tells to the people, okay, I have to raise the taxes now, because I need money to build streets and canalization and this and that and that. And the profit from investing that into infrastructure that needs years to plan is coming in 10 years or 20 years. Then that goes against the speed of political communication, election, and all of that, because someone needs to invest and the profit comes years or decades later. And so there is a blockade because of that. Even in Germany, we have that, that delays in the clever investment. And that needs to be counterbalanced by organizing a governance about strategic investment, especially when climate change is only beginning. It's already there, but still the drama of the extremes of the weather patterns that we will experience is going to extremes. And so the political system and the generation of today must say, I now spend all the money not to increase further the riches of a few. I need all the money to make a broad availability of a life support system and beyond even my own nation, including other nations. So I just discussed time, and now we have to discuss space, because Europe and North America and other countries have exploited other continents for decades and centuries. We have an obligation in space also, not only in time for future generations, but in space also for those that have no choice, where governments do not have the funding, or where the people do not have the governments to think strategically.
But how can we, like you said, that there is a certain form of rationale behind not investing into water infrastructure? There's a certain logic to it that you explained, because the benefits come like long term, the investment is short term. Like, do you see like any tools or any like measures that could like change this rationale to make it actually to incentivize and to, you know, to to motivate governments that you just described to change their behavior structures?
You're putting me in a difficult position that the questions you're asking is not my research, right? So I'm happy to speak about all of this because it's fascinating when one thinks broadly, and when we, the two of us, you a philosopher, me a polar researcher, when we put us into the position of extraterrestrial organisms that watch Earth and humanity and ask broad questions like, why do they do it that way? They know exactly the technology. They all, if you ask them, they would say, oh, it would be good if everyone has access to clean water, but still they don't do it. What is that? Are they sick? So that's our position right now. I must say that because I have to pay attention that I'm not here advertised as a scientist, and you ask me questions that have to do with governments, social sciences, political sciences is not my field. I'm thinking and I'm guessing and I'm reading and I'm summarizing this as a problem as a governance, economical, but also ethical problem. And the solutions is, of course, an international system of trust. We have some of these, but they don't have all the reach into certain governments, into certain places. But in theory, we have got a lot of advice. We have the United Nations with all of their targets and goals. We have politically defined goals also, the Sustainability Development Goals, in which exactly those points are targeted as a unified international policy target to give clean water to everyone, to provide school to every kid who is born, to make it right for women to participate in everything, and to make the ocean clean again, right? To speak of water here. We have long lists of these goals. They are internationally defined, but the practical steps to organizing each and all of them, because they're all interconnected, is so hard. We have not even achieved it in Europe. We haven't even achieved it in Germany, because it needs a different type of thinking, a different type of political decision taking, a different type of long-term strategy, and of a definition what is good quality of life.
These are super interesting points, and I do think it's also really relevant for companies to have an understanding of the broader context in which they have to act, and to understand these like very complex and broad coherences that you just described. But I also think that maybe for our audience, it would be interesting to hear a little bit more about the importance of technologies, or the potential of technologies for a constructive change in the water systems. And especially, I mean, like you described, these kind of natural human environmental systems, that weren't so reliable on technology. But since we are facing a very rapid and a very big population growth all over the planet, I mean, there are more and more people, that also, for me, it poses the question whether isn't it necessary to apply more complex technological solutions to find such a new balance, or maybe I'm seeing it wrong. I don't know. What's your position on that?
Oh, well, I mean, I give you there are two answers to this. If we think broadly, if we think those places where there is really like no water at all, where every little water has to be used to drink, to feed the cattle, to have something for the cattle and so on, then it's just a question. There can be small local technologies that help people to survive. That often has to do with providing energy in the first place, so that, for example, a well can be made to access deep groundwater, that rainwater can be collected, and that basic filters function that filter against microbes and against toxic substances in the water. Of course, we have technical support organized internationally, and that can be done, but the question is of sustainability. So how can you self-enable people, wherever they live, to protect themselves and develop their own strategy of living in places? And often this almost, I would almost say, colonial thinking. We know everything, we have all the technologies, we fly somewhere, we build some dwell, and then we leave again. This thing has been proven as being often not sustainable. Most of the time, technology has to come with teaching, with self-enabling, with finding also solutions that have to do with governance, with long-term strategy of investment, and so on. So that's the one side that we have to think about and realize very often very simple solutions are essential. For example, a famous microbiologist, Rita Colwell, she has helped tremendously by recommending that a combat against cholera that still kills a lot of children and kills a lot of people. A simple way could be if the women learn to use their old practices when they wash, when they wear cotton clothes, if they would fold their own clothes several times, they would have a filter. They could filter through their clothes water to remove some of the carriers of the cholera vibrios. And that is a simple technology that has helped already saving lives. So to think practically and to define technology as a solution that can be used and self-enables people in that very place, that is to me a valid solution. That's the one side. Now, I need to say that we have to worry ourselves about access to clean water. The climate change is so that in many areas on Earth, the problem is not too little water, it is a mixture of too little and too much water. And especially now in Germany, for example, in northern Germany where I live, we have to face the situation that there is so much rain in such a very short time that our canalization does not work, that we have overflows, that we get extra pollution and dirt and disease in warming waters from overflowing canalization, where the water will no longer be treated so that the rivers are poisoned and many other such things. We have the same problem in another way. We will not immediately have no water to drink, but we have a problem with having the right infrastructure, adapting at the right time, recognizing the problem, taking the words of the scientists for real, and adapting, building infrastructure that works for the future, that is close by, right? And that is an important thought to make, that this is not only a problem of a faraway continent for which we don't feel responsible, it is a problem of here and now.
You just mentioned like a form of best practice example by like mentioning this piece of cloths that you can use as a filter. Do you also maybe know about some form of example where we can like learn something from or getting inspired by from another country where like on a larger scale like water infrastructure was improved, or where they found some solutions for regional problems?
Well, in a way, of course, it is just preserving natural water flows. So where we have changed riverbeds, where we have over industrialized and over cemented our environment so that we have lost the natural cooling and cleaning abilities that water has, where we have freed our cities from wetlands and from lakes and rivers, we have fundamental problems with heat and drought. And where we have destroyed our forests, we have problems with drought, because trees are a gigantic natural pump. Their roots will take up water when their leaves draw the water, and the water flows in circles. And Alexander von Humboldt, who we all know and cherish as a great thinker of the interaction between humans and nature, he has very early on written about this issue with Germany, that the crazy Germans just hack down their forests and don't understand that they will have a fundamental problem with water when they do so. So this understanding of people, of cultures in many regions of Earth that know that we will be punished if we leave a certain balance with nature, that's a fundamental knowledge system that now our high-tech science also has provided, but basically it has always been there, and it is very obviously so that technology cannot replace nature per se. In parts it can, but not at this dimension we're in right now.
there are certain shifts, you know, in the framework conditions, like climate change, we talked about population growth, ongoing urbanization, and so on, which we cannot really change from one day to the next day. Also, climate change, I mean, like, it's really important that we slow it down, that we do something against it, but in some ways, it is like a condition we kind of have to adapt to, we kind of have to find solutions for. And seeing this picture together, I wonder whether it doesn't call for more complex solutions, and also societal, regulatory, but also technological solutions.
That is obvious that we need advanced solutions in many places there where we have mega cities where it's all about water, and they're immense, they're fantastic solutions. Often when I am, like, for example, in Hong Kong or Singapore and other of these Asian mega cities, I notice how plants are used to help with the microclimates that we have in the cities. There are new ideas by megacity architecture or by house building architecture, wherever we can afford to have flowing water with very little energy investment, we can have fantastic cooling systems and also a microclimate and a healthier air and all kinds of things. So there is also a way to think technology where we take the best ideas from nature and the best ideas from engineering and bring them together and come up with fantastic solutions. Absolutely. So there is a lot of hope in this. But I would still say there is a lot of worry, because in a gigantic number, people are left behind. And because they have neither access to healthy nature nor to technology solutions that always need education and need also investment and a stable system, right? So where's the way to go? I don't know. I mean, the people who are listening to us, they will probably, for them, they will find aspects where that rings a bell and they think about their own decision taking. But everyone who has to decide about infrastructure, about taking the steps towards a better living environment, a better living quality, knows exactly that it needs reliability for decisions. It's so hard to build railways or canalization or a new city that fits better to what people need when you have a year to decide, or when you have only 1% of the funding you need and nowhere to turn to. So we have to acknowledge that, and it makes no sense to always think high tech, high tech, high tech, when the underlying problem is reliability and trust.
Maybe at this point we can try to put the different puzzle pieces together. You talked about the importance of reliability and trust. Earlier, before in our conversation, you also mentioned the responsibility of countries like Germany to contribute to a positive change, and maybe also of German companies and the role they can play in this transformation. So trying to bring that a little bit together, like, where do you see this is going, or where do you see the opportunities and the responsibility of Germany and German companies in this development?
Well, I would say if companies can make the sustainable development goals a business target instead of only raising the profit for their stakeholders, that is one step. And many companies have started this process. Many companies have tried to change and influence their KPIs, their key performance indicators, so that they reflect our common humanity's interest in reaching more sustainability, better lives. That definitely counts, right? But then it means that we have to work with the economic system we're in, and give that economic system a strength in solving problems that are not solved by money only. That would be a fundamental change. But if a system like our economical system is mostly primed by making profit for the shareholders, then it's absolutely eating itself up, and it's eating nature.
Even like Larry Fink, who's like you know him, like he's like the boss kind of the largest investment company in the world, BlackRock, and he also wrote like in a letter that like this short-term shareholder value thinking basically undermines the whole idea of shareholder value. And he himself, like I mean, like we could say, like the capitalist ever. Yeah, he belongs to the 30 most powerful people in the world according to Forbes magazine. He said, please, CEOs, like change your thinking, change your behavior. Otherwise, we will, in the midterm, we will like actually draw investments out of your companies. We will not invest anymore, because this is not only not sustainable from ecological point of view, but it's also not sustainable from economical point of view, because you undermine the foundations of long-term profit, or like in this logic.
That's part of the new thinking. I don't know if you want to call it. How would the future have to be that it all falls together? I mean, there's also another question, of course, and again, I draw from my experience with recent discussions in Europe and Germany. The other unit that we have to watch is a good working space. I mean, A, enough jobs, and B, jobs that are tailored to the needs of the people. There is a Even without climate change as a key problem, we would have been in a major transformation of jobs because of digitalization, because of the robots that take away work. I still have to find a robot that works for oceans, that will not need more people than without the robot, but still we have to say that. So we would have a gigantic job transformation where the prediction was, in the end, most jobs will only be for the highly educated. There will be no more jobs for the non-educated people. So we need jobs for people who have the choice in their lives, or maybe they didn't have a choice, but they have not the access to the full education, including university, but they just want to have a plannable income to live, but to have some income to be able to live. Maybe they have other ideas. Maybe they invest all their time in their children, or in the elderly, or in nature, or in, maybe they're ill. Maybe they have another charge in life than just earning money for the sense of the money, or for liking to speak as we do or so. So where do these go? And that question, which companies have an idea about jobs, about self-realization, about the diversity of life ideas that we all need, that will be another key question for the future. So there is an assessment that says nature and landscapes, and they are so damaged, they have become so dependent on people who care for them, that there is an idea that we are just thinking in the wrong way, that basically when we think nature is also technology, nature has solutions, nature is there to help us to provide life support to humans, there is a job in service to nature. There is a gigantic job market in service to nature. In many places, we absolutely depend on people who are watching out for the forests, for the birds, for the water. And so just the question, and my institute, my research, we have invested in citizen science projects and had scientists who insisted we try this. So just the mere task of cleaning beaches from dirt, from plastics that kills mammals, kills birds, that is a new job. Who wants to do that? We don't know. I mean, so far there is a lot of free help from kids who like to go and clean a beach, and then give their parents shit that the parents are silly because they throw so much plastics. So these things happen, but worldwide, and that's very serious. We have to recognize there is a way to think nature needs support. We've taken more than we should. There are new jobs, services, and for clean water, there could be a thinking of, how do we help? And even if the high tech is absent, how can we help with cleaning water by the force of people, by the force of labor, by paying people to clean?
Like we talked a lot about like these like quite complex issues, also partially how they emerged, but like when we look into the future a little bit and we try to like see like what is happening to us, like what do we have to prepare for, like to put it very broadly, this question, like where do you see the future of water in a way?
So Earth has a water cycle, and as far as we know, the warming of Earth due to climate change will make that water cycle more fast, more rapid, more unpredictable. And so, for example, a huge amount of clean water is stored as frozen ice sheets on Antarctica and Greenland, and that will come into melt, and that will raise the seawater level. The seawater level has an essential role in the quality of water in the future, because in many places on Earth, when the sea level rises, our infrastructure is not prepared, we get saline groundwater that will not be drinkable anymore. But the ocean is also an endless resource of water. So if we learn to have enough energy to desalinize, to get rid of the salt, and then we can produce a lot of fresh water. There are some companies around that have proposed, let's take glaciers from the mountains, from Antarctica, from Greenland, and carry them to places where there is a lack of water. So there will be new weird ideas about how to tap into water that we have commonly not thought about. There is this immense problem with precipitation. When we warm Earth, the 70% of our surface is water. The water will evaporate to the atmosphere. The atmosphere will form clouds where there is dust. These clouds will travel differently from what we know, and they will precipitate in areas where there is a mountain in the way, or where there is a cold front in the way, or whatever. There will be new areas of precipitation, heavy precipitation, catastrophic precipitation. So the water cycle also has many issues with just revising our infrastructure wherever we live. So if you are a water company, a company that builds water infrastructure, you should be better trained in understanding what climate change will do to the regions you invest in, the ideas of where you can help and work. That is a fundamental knowledge, I think, for the future of water.
And okay, wow, that's like it sounds a little bit like, again, like some warning flags that we see here, like certain problems like will even like become like stronger, more pressing. But like, do you see like any opportunities for companies, like in the way of like, or what do you think are like good examples on companies who can like adapt to these changes, but also like contribute to a positive development path when it comes to water?
In technology, we also make a lot of progress. There are new ideas about how to make water treatment more available, cheaper, not all centralized, but also decentralized. There are fantastic projects. I happen to know some where the idea is what are simple engineering hacks that in any place on Earth you can find solutions for water. There is, however, the problem that if you don't understand how climate change will change everything, you will not understand how to invest right. So I would recommend to all companies to have someone in place that can tap into the knowledge we have with the change in weather patterns, the extremes in climate change, and also someone who understands the sustainability issue with water. There is a lot to be thought about with materials. There is still a need to get rid of all of the plastics we have, nano, micro, and large plastics that pollutes water. There is foreign substances in water we don't want, where bacteria can help. So there is a long list of the unexpected where you really need to think ahead, where you need to tap into the knowledge that is already available in science to make the right decisions for your companies. There's also social innovation, and there I must say, I still find it really cruel to think that there are companies that earn their money because they have developed a non-sustainable water distribution system where only the rich can afford that bottles of clean water are brought to their houses. And because the rich are no longer investing in the infrastructure because they would like to have clean water, there will be even less clean water for the poor. I'm not saying company names here, but you may know what I'm talking about. We have some ideas about these practices. If I would say again once more, if the companies and everyone with their workers, if you understand that we are just one species, if you inform yourself about the suffering of the new generation of kids that have a less reliable world than we had, if you understand that you as a company can do good, and it might be an asset of your company to do good and speak about it, because your workers that you attract, your talents, will be happy to know they work for a company who does good things. I really recommend to invest time to think sustainable development goals and to find 5 maybe of the goals that ring a bell with your company, in which you take pledges, in which you take targets, and you say, I'm not passive, I'm a company that changes the world, invests into a future we want.
I think that's like super interesting. I could go on with this topic for a long time. I think, also to me it appeals very much as a philosopher to see this bigger picture. But since we're like moving towards the end of our conversation, like we can like try to connect it a little bit. I mean, like the export initiative of the German Ministry for Environment focuses also on the areas where there are positive synergy effects between ecological developments and economical developments. Because sometimes these things may stay in conflict, but sometimes they may not, you know? And after all we said, I do think it's crucial to understand that investing into water infrastructures is one of the areas where these things really go along, because it doesn't only mean a healthier life for the people there, it also means enabling or setting the foundations for a prosperous society and a prosperous economy for emerging markets, which then can be integrated into the economic framework. And so basically trying to find a little bit of a win-win solution here. And when I think about these coherences, and that is my last question to you, where do you see the role of the AHKs in that? Because I mean, they're really there all over the world in different countries, have a big network and bring together different stakeholders. What do you think? What can they do? How can they contribute?
Yeah, I had a lot of discussions like the one we're having now, in meetings and workshops where HKs invited scientists and just had the opportunity to ask all the questions that you dare to ask in a protected room with your own scientists that you booked for yourself. And I found these discussions very fruitful also for us scientists, because we get to hear the raw questions that everyone has. And often that makes us thinking differently, and that makes us think our communication differently, our examples differently. So I like those discussions. And I think it is good if you bring together different perspectives of companies. Some have found solutions, also cultural solutions, social innovation, and others can learn from them. So the type of exchange, just to tap into the knowledge we have about the future, that is recommendable, no?
Yeah, it is. It sounds recommendable to me. Thank you very much for all these thoughts and ideas, and for sharing your expertise, and getting into dialogue. And I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure the audience did too. And
And I wish, of course, that all the companies out there who are listening today, just don't forget the oceans. So many of us are living with the back to the sea, but the oceans is the key water life support system of Earth. And no matter what you do, your work will always have an impact on the oceans. And just to know that, and to acknowledge that, and to think how to make it a good relationship between you and the oceans, that is also, of course, a key path to take for a better future.
Wow, that was a big talk, and I think for me personally, once more it became obvious how complex a lot of topics are, and that's really necessary to integrate different perspectives if we want to solve main challenges of today and tomorrow. And especially like in the case of water, it seems as if there are already a lot of solutions available, but often there's a lack of long-term thinking that allows for these solutions to be implemented. And that is something also like Antje and I talked about, and I think like in a lot of areas we have to understand that we somehow do have to widen our horizon and focus on long-term strategies. And this is not only necessary for ecological reasons, also in the economic field, also for businesses. This becomes more and more relevant, even though, or especially like in the light of like a lot of investors demanding more and more long-term strategies. When it comes to water, there are a lot of technological solutions that have been developed in Germany. And without falling into a naive white savior syndrome that the whole globe has waited for German engineers to finally share their wisdom, I do think there is a point in like actually being aware that we do have like valuable approaches that maybe we can also like on a collaborative level, yeah, on the same eye level, like implement in other places, work together, you know, and actually develop more and more the consciousness of being a globally connected humanity, as we just witnessed in the case of COVID. If you're more interested into the subject of water and also like what you, and maybe you belong to an AHK, what you as an AHK can do in order to make this subject like to viable for business opportunities, but also for constructive societal change, then you can have a look at the online course, which is designed especially for that reason. I myself have a lot of things to think about and also a lot of philosophical questions, of course. But yeah, see you next time. Thank you very much for listening and watching.